In the heart of downtown Atlanta, an old black woman named Clara Jackson, aged 65 but looking much older due to years of hardship, walked into the bustling lobby of Citibank. Her hair was a tangle of gray strands, her face deeply lined with the marks of time and struggle. She wore a thick, patched-up gray coat, its fabric worn thin and covered in dust, as if it had traveled countless miles. Her shoes were tattered, the soles nearly gone, and each step she took was slow and laborious. On her shoulder hung a frayed canvas bag, faded and heavy, its contents hidden from view. As she entered, the people inside immediately began whispering to each other, their voices low but laced with mocking laughter. A well-dressed white woman in her 40s, clutching an expensive handbag, pulled it closer, casting a nervous and wary glance at Clara. Nearby, a young bank teller, Mark, smirked at his colleague Sarah and whispered, "That old woman must have wandered in here by mistake. What a nuisance." Sarah scoffed, nodding in agreement, throwing a disdainful look at Clara. Undeterred, Clara continued walking quietly, her deep brown eyes calm yet resolute, seemingly unaffected by the scornful stares directed her way. She made her way to the center of the lobby, stopping in a heavy silence filled with curiosity and derision from the surrounding customers. A tall security guard, Tom Harris, a burly white man known for his aggressive and impatient demeanor, stepped forward, his brow furrowed and his hand resting on the holster of his gun. His eyes were full of disdain as he assessed Clara. The atmosphere in the bank froze, a mix of curiosity and tension hanging in the air. Clara stood up straight, slowly raising her eyes to meet the faces staring at her. In a quiet but clear voice, she broke the suffocating silence. "This bank is mine," she declared, her words soft yet determined. The lobby fell into stunned silence for a moment, before erupting into mocking laughter, the sound echoing mockingly through every corner. It seemed Clara had expected this reaction. She stood unwavering, her gaze firm and strong, an enigmatic figure in the heart of Citibank, a place that seemed like it could never belong to her. But her appearance and declaration, though seemingly absurd, were about to stir a storm greater than anyone could imagine. Clara stood in the center of the lobby and repeated, "This bank is mine." Immediately, the vast space inside Citibank filled with mocking laughter, faint at first, but quickly spreading like a wave of disdain that engulfed the poor old black woman. The crowd's laughter wasn't just from surprise, but also from a deep sense of contempt, as if Clara's skin color and ragged appearance had turned her into a cheap joke in their eyes. In the corner, two young tellers, Mark and Sarah, leaned toward each other, whispering maliciously. "This old woman must be delusional," Mark sneered. "These folks from the slums always have these crazy fantasies." Sarah responded with a condescending laugh. "Maybe she thinks this is a charity office." Their words weren't whispered softly enough to escape Clara's ears, but she remained still, her gaze unwavering, fixed on the main counter, where the bank manager, Robert Lane, stood. Robert was a man in his 40s, with neatly combed brown hair, a typical face of a well-educated white man from Atlanta, his cold gray eyes always showing a hint of caution and a touch of arrogance. Noticing the situation drawing unnecessary attention, Robert quickly signaled for Tom, the security guard, to step forward. Tom approached Clara with a sneer on his face, gesturing toward the front door. "Hey, old woman, this isn't a place for you to wander in and cause trouble. You'd better leave before I have to get physical," he said firmly, each word carrying a threatening tone, his hand still resting on his gun holster. Clara slowly turned to look at Tom, her gaze unflinching. There was no sign of fear on her weathered face, only an odd sense of calmness that made Tom hesitate for a few seconds. I'm not here to cause trouble, Clara said slowly, her voice clear and steady enough to echo throughout the space. I'm here to take back what's mine, something this bank took from me over half a century ago. Her strong and unwavering words once again silenced the entire lobby. Robert, who had initially dismissed this as a small disturbance, now felt an unusual sense of unease. He stepped out from behind the counter, approaching Clara with a polite but cold demeanor, his eyes filled with doubt and impatience. Ma'am, I'm not sure what you think, but you're mistaken. This bank has been here for decades, owned by the Carter family since my grandfather's time. Perhaps you're confusing something, Robert said, clearly trying to maintain professional calm, but failing to hide a fleeting look of contempt in his eyes. I'm not mistaken, Clara replied firmly, slowly placing her old canvas bag down on the floor, as if it contained a secret about to turn everything upside down. A few customers stepped back, exchanging glances filled with confusion and curiosity. Tom, growing increasingly impatient, stepped closer to Clara and said sharply, I'm warning you one last time, old woman. Either you leave, or I'll call the police. Don't make this worse. Clara didn't respond immediately. She bent down slowly and began to open the old canvas bag, her trembling hands steady with each deliberate movement. Everyone held their breath, watching her strange actions. Even Tom paused, his hand on his gun holster slightly loosening, a mix of suspicion and curiosity written on his tense face. Everything I need to say is in here, Clara said softly but confidently, then slowly opened the bag, revealing what it had been concealing. The moment the bag opened, the entire lobby of Citibank fell into absolute silence as those who witnessed it widened their eyes in shock. What Clara had just revealed wasn't merely the ramblings of an old poor woman. It was a truth so explosive it could potentially upend everything they thought they knew about this place. Before anyone could see what was inside, Tom stamped his heel loudly on the marble floor, the sound intentionally breaking the silence. That's enough, he barked, his words full of contempt. This is a bank, not a shelter for wandering black people causing trouble. His words echoed, causing some of the white customers to nod in silent agreement, their eyes reflecting deep-seated prejudices passed down through generations. But Clara remained standing, unmoving in the face of the insults and discriminatory stares, her weathered face calm, her deep brown eyes unwavering, gleaming with an unusual resolve. I'm not causing trouble, Clara responded, her voice still calm, clear, and steady as cold steel. I've come to reclaim what rightfully belongs to me. What you call me doesn't matter. The truth doesn't change because of insults. Tom was slightly taken aback by the steadfastness and calmness of the frail old woman standing before him. He was used to making people like her back down, humiliated and escorted out, but this time he faced something he hadn't anticipated. The silent, unyielding strength of an old black woman who seemed harmless. A small cough broke the tense air. Robert, the bank manager, finally spoke, his tone polite but trying to de-escalate the situation. Tom, please calm down, he said, still looking at Clara with a cold gaze, but no longer showing the clear contempt Tom had. Ma'am, if you truly have any evidence, we will review it. But first, I request that you stop causing a disturbance in my bank. Clara gave a slight nod, then bent down, her old hands carefully pulling out a worn, yellowed ledger from the bag. She raised it up, letting everyone see it clearly, and her voice rang out steadily, but with weight. This is the ledger of Citibank from 1948, the time when I founded this institution. I am Clara Jackson, and I am the rightful owner of this bank before it was stolen by greed and racial hatred. Her declaration caused the lobby to fall into another heavy silence as astonished and confused glances were exchanged. Some customers, though still trying to maintain their disdainful expressions, now harbored a growing sense of curiosity and unease. Meanwhile, Robert suddenly turned pale, his hand trembling slightly as he heard the name Jackson echo clearly through the expansive space of the bank. As for Tom, despite maintaining a tough expression, a flicker of doubt appeared deep in his eyes. He took half a step back, his hand subconsciously lowering from his gun holster. It seemed he had just realized that the frail old black woman standing before him was not simply a troublesome wanderer as he had insulted her earlier. Clara stood silently, holding the old ledger aloft, her gaze never leaving Robert's now changing face. In that moment, she knew she had made those who had scorned and belittled her begin to reconsider. And more importantly, the truth she brought was slowly shaking the very foundation of the world they had always believed to be stable and inviolable. The atmosphere in the bank shifted from one filled with contemptuous glances and mockery to one of tension and unease as a truth was about to be revealed, a truth that had the potential to change everything. Amid the suffocating tension, Clara stood still, lifting the old, tattered book as if it were a flag of truth she had traded her whole life for. After what felt like an eternity, she slowly lowered the book, her aged eyes soaked with distant memories yet sharp, scanning the faces watching her with tension. No one spoke, no one dared move, and even the breath seemed to freeze in that moment. Clara, with a calm expression and deliberate movements, bent down and quietly placed the worn canvas bag on the marble floor. The sound startled everyone in the bank's lobby, causing them to freeze, holding their breath. That bag, which just moments ago had been dismissed as the cheap belongings of an old drifter, now became the focal point of every gaze, as if it held an earth-shattering truth waiting to be revealed. Tom, who had looked at Clara with the most contemptuous gaze earlier, now lost the confidence he had. He took a small step back, his legs moving involuntarily, as if his instincts were telling him he had just come into contact with something uncontrollable. In that instant, the usual aggression and disdain Tom carried were replaced by a deep sense of doubt and caution. Robert stood frozen, his face rigid as stone, his eyes fixed on the bag as if hypnotized. Robert, a man known for his ability to control any situation, was clearly being cornered into something he had never faced before. His hand clenched, trembling slightly, as though he were afraid of what lay inside that old, tattered bag. Clara seemed in no rush. She let the silence and tension build to its peak, slowly bending down to untie the bag's string. Her gnarled, wrinkled hands, worn by years of hardship, moved with a steadiness and determination that no one could deny. As soon as the last knot was undone, Clara slowly opened the mouth of the bag, letting its contents emerge into the light of the bank's lobby. Everyone present leaned in subconsciously, curious to see what awaited them. Then, stacks of old, faded money slowly became visible, one bundle at a time, rolling gently out onto the cold marble floor, scattered in disarray. Each bundle clearly bore the old logo of Citibank, a symbol that had not been used for over half a century. The bills were yellowed, the edges worn, as though they had just been pulled from a long-forgotten storage vault, something even the most senior bank employees had never seen before. An invisible chill seemed to run down the spines of everyone in the lobby. Tom's eyes widened in shock, trying to mask the confusion rising on his face. He cast a doubtful look at Robert, silently begging for an explanation. But Robert too looked startled, his face visibly pale as he stared at the ancient bundles of money. "It can't be," Robert whispered, his voice trembling, losing the calmness he usually exuded. "How do you have this money?" Clara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she carefully picked up one of the bundles, her aged, slender hand gently caressing the faded paper as though holding a precious but painful piece of memory. Her eyes briefly flashed with emotion, as if for a moment she was traveling back in time to the earliest days when she founded Citibank, when she laid each brick to build it, filled with dreams and hope. In 1948, she spoke slowly, her voice quiet but clear enough for everyone to hear. I founded this bank with my own hands and sweat. Every dollar, every brick beneath your feet carries my mark. But then, just because I'm black, you believed the lies and drove me out. Her words rang out, clear, strong, filled with emotion and conviction. In the lobby, the curious gazes began to shift from awe to unease and confusion. Many began to feel ashamed as they realized the harsh truth Clara had just revealed, though some stubbornly refused to believe her story. Tom tried to regain his composure, stepping forward a little, his voice more cautious now, but still full of doubt. How do we know this isn't some kind of scam, old woman? Someone like you. Where could you get this? Clara looked straight into Tom's eyes, her gaze so sharp it made him freeze, feeling an unexplainable sense of authority and resolve. Because I am Clara Jackson, the woman this very bank stole her identity, her assets, and her life from. She paused, looking around the vast room before continuing. And now, I'm here to take it all back. Her words echoed through the lobby, leaving everyone stunned as they began to realize they were witnessing the beginning of a storm that would change everything they ever knew about Citibank, a truth that could no longer be buried. As Clara's words echoed through the lobby, the ancient stacks of money lay scattered across the cold marble floor, each yellowed bill, a haunting reminder of a forgotten past that Citibank had buried over half a century ago. All eyes were fixed on the old woman, a mix of astonishment and skepticism in their gazes. The bank manager, Robert Lane, had gone pale, though he was always confident in his ability to handle any situation. Confronted with these old, yet undeniable pieces of evidence, he felt the once solid foundation of power beneath him beginning to shake. Robert quickly stepped forward, bent down, and picked up a bundle of the faded bills. He stared at the worn logo imprinted on the crinkled paper, then turned to Clara with an expression of both surprise and irritation. You say you are Clara Jackson, the original founder of Citibank in 1948? Robert tried to maintain a calm tone, but the tremor in his voice revealed his unease. Yes, Clara replied briefly but firmly, her gaze old yet sharp, cutting through every doubt. I am the one who laid the first stones to build this bank. I spent my youth and heart to make Citibank a symbol from which you all benefit today, but it was all stolen from me simply because I am black. Robert shook his head repeatedly, trying to deny what he had just heard. He knew that if what this old woman said was true, the entire history of Citibank, which he had always been so proud of, would be completely upended. Sweat began to bead on his forehead, and the composure he was so accustomed to was rapidly slipping away. He took a deep breath, trying to regain control, and looked at Clara with an expression of both doubt and challenge. What you're saying is hard to believe, Miss Jackson. If you were the founder of this bank, why is there no record of you in the history of Citibank? I've studied every document of this bank, and I've never seen a name like yours mentioned. His voice grew more forceful, as if clinging to the slim hope that this was all just a misunderstanding or some kind of scam. Clara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she calmly reached into her bag once again and pulled out an old worn leather ledger with a dark brown cover, faintly imprinted with the words Citibank Ledger 1948. She gently flipped through the yellowed and torn pages, then stopped at a particular page where a series of signatures and handwritten notes in faded ink were recorded. This is the first ledger of Citibank, She spoke slowly, her voice deep but commanding, capturing the absolute attention of everyone present. "It has my name, Clara Jackson, alongside my business partner at the time, Henry Brooks. We founded this bank together, but then greed and racism made Henry turn his back on me." Her voice faltered slightly, her eyes filled with the deep pain of a woman who had been betrayed by someone she once trusted. She continued in a steady but emotional tone. "Brooks couldn't accept that a black woman like me could own and lead a large bank like Citi. So he secretly conspired with other powerful people, forged documents, and spread lies that I was incapable of running the bank. They forced me out of the very project I had built, erased my name, and closed every door when I sought justice." Each of Clara's words seemed like a sharp knife, cutting through the veil of hidden history, causing those present in the bank to shiver. Some customers lowered their heads, feeling ashamed as they realized the injustice the old woman had endured, while others remained skeptical, whispering to one another about the truth of her story. Tom Harris, who had always maintained an aggressive attitude, now couldn't deny the seriousness in Clara's words. His gaze had lost its initial confidence, replaced by confusion and doubt. He quietly looked to Robert, waiting for orders or direction from his superior. Clara took another deep breath, trying to keep her composure, her eyes brimming with emotion, but her voice growing sharper, stronger than ever. "In the end, I was left with nothing. Not only did I lose the bank I had dedicated my life to building, but I also lost my dignity and career. They wiped my name from every record, erasing me from existence as if I had never been here." She paused again, her deep gaze fixed on Robert and Tom, as if trying to pierce their souls. "And now I've returned, not for revenge, but to force you to face the truth. You must understand that every brick, every dollar, every breath of this bank came from my sacrifice and loss." Clara's words reverberated powerfully in the thick silence. Everyone understood that the truth she had just revealed was not just the story of one woman, but the deep pain, the stain in history that they had purposely chosen to forget. In that moment, Clara stood there, resilient and unbowed, not just as an old woman in poverty, but as the living symbol of the fight against injustice, prejudice, and greed that history had once buried. But now, she had returned, and this time, she would not allow anyone to erase her again. The atmosphere inside Citibank remained heavy with silence after Clara finished recounting her painful story. The eyes of the crowd silently followed every small movement of the old woman, their expressions a mix of shock and a sense of shame as they realized they were witnessing a long-hidden, brutal past. It felt as though the air itself had become stagnant, waiting for something greater to emerge. In that tense moment, Clara slowly bent down to her old canvas bag once again, her movements deliberate and steady, as if she wanted everyone in the room to fully witness the truth she was about to reveal. Her eyes were calm yet resolute, carrying the confidence of a woman who had waited over half a century to prove her innocence. From the bag, Clara pulled out a stack of yellowed papers carefully wrapped in oilskin, preserved like a precious artifact for decades. She stood up straight and carefully opened the oilskin, her aged fingers gently turning each page. All eyes in the room were immediately focused on her, a mix of curiosity and tension as they waited to see what this old woman would reveal that might leave them in shock. "These are the original legal documents, never before disclosed," Clara said, her voice clear yet calm. "These papers prove that I never signed any document transferring ownership of this bank to anyone, especially not to the Carter family." The name Carter immediately caused the room to tense up, to the point that a few people nearby could be heard breathing heavily. The Carter family was not unfamiliar to Citibank. They were one of the wealthiest and most powerful families in Atlanta, having run the bank for generations, and no one had ever questioned the legitimacy of their ownership. Robert Lane, the bank manager standing closest to Clara, began to feel everything around him spin. His legs nearly buckled, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He tried to maintain his composure, but his efforts only made his unease more apparent. He stammered, his voice trembling. What are you saying, Miss Jackson? The Carter family has always been the legitimate owner of Citibank. That's been recognized for generations. Clara fixed her sharp gaze on Robert, as if piercing through every flimsy excuse he could offer. She stepped closer to him, gently placing the stack of documents into the shaking hands of the stunned bank manager. Robert, look at these documents for yourself. You'll understand better than anyone what I've just said. You've been living in the lie created by your predecessors. Robert reluctantly took the papers, trying to hold them steady so they wouldn't fall to the floor. He began reading line by line, every signature and seal faded by time, but still clear enough to reveal a shocking truth. His heart raced, his face turning pale, as each line he read shattered his trust in the Carter family's history, a history he had once been so proud of. Beside Robert, Tom Harris could no longer maintain his usual aggressive demeanor. He quietly observed the expression on his superior's face, a deep unease rising within him. Until now, Tom had always believed he stood on the side of justice, on the side of societal order, but now that belief was being severely shaken. Finally, Robert stopped at a page bearing the signatures of Clara Jackson and Henry Brooks. He studied it more closely, feeling a jolt of cold run down his spine as he realized there were no signatures from Clara on any of the later property transfer documents. All the documents were signed and legitimized by Henry Brooks and the Carter family, quietly and insidiously.